Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to Got Your Back NHL edition. LeBrun, Rishaug, and MJ. Yes, Mike Johnson from all the way across the globe from Sweden. Mike Johnson standing by along with Pierre LeBrun. Lots going on around the National Hockey League. Looking forward to breaking some of it down. As always, Got Your Back NHL edition is brought to you by Kuma Outdoor Gear, where they've got a wide range of gear to fit all of your outdoor needs, from tents and sleeping bags and travel games, pet products, drinkware, and they love their new Switchback heated chair as well, the world's first heated chair powered by Bluetooth technology. It's got dual heat zones in the seat and the back, and you can adjust it from your phone. It's ridiculous. Super cool. Make sure you go to kumaoutdoorgear.com to check out all that they have to offer. That's Kuma Outdoor Gear. It's experience luxury outdoors. Pierre and I, just from our home offices, Johnny off on the road, an exciting road trip over in Sweden. Where are you exactly, and how is the jet lag, my man?
The crazy part is, Shaggy, I couldn't even sum it up like a, hey, what's up in Swedish. Like, I got zero Swedish to offer you. I cannot speak it at all. I am coming from my hotel room at the Grand Central Terminal in Stockholm from the very European hotel, tiny and small beds and everything else. But got over here on Tuesday morning, so yesterday morning. Today's the second day. I'm doing okay. A little tired this afternoon, but I'm doing all right. So the whole day at rink, all four teams there practicing. We're not going to get down this road, but Minnesota, like one of the hardest practices I remember seeing in any situation. Like straight, sneaky bag skating drills, full contact battle drills, right? Partly because they're losing, partly because it's their first practice over here, but not pleasant. But yeah, Stockholm it's an amazing city. It's beautiful. It's food, architecture, people. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So all I know in Swedish, but it's always helpful when you're trying to order a drink before last call is thank you or thanks. So thank you very much is tack så mycket. Yes. And if you just want to say thanks, it's easier to remember. It's tack.
Yeah.
Tack. Yeah. Every time we've had a Swedish guest on the show, Pierre, you throw the tack så mycket at them and they look at you you have three heads. I don't think you're doing that right.
Oh, no, I've been told.
Say it.
Per Bjurman, Per Bjurman is the Bob McKenzie of the Swedish hockey media. In fact, Per is over there. You're going to run into him, MJ. But Per, who's based in New York City but went back home for this, says that I say it just fine. So
that's great. Do you have a quick cure-all for jet lag? Like, I'm the guy that's always, I push through. So I'll stay up for as many hours as I need to stay up and then go to bed at a normal time. Yeah, but you pay a heavy price when you do it that way. MJ, what's your strategy, man? Or are you oversleeping? You look tired. I'm not going to lie to you, and I love you, but you look tired.
Well, to be fair, I was asleep 6 minutes ago. So, I mean, I woke up to do this. So, my strategy, which you'll not be surprised to hear, that I sleep when I'm tired. Like the first day, yesterday, I stayed up till like 11:30. So I stayed up through the whole day and then slept until 9 in the morning. But now it's the second day. I'm tired. It's 3 in the afternoon. I will mix in a nap and then just be on my way. I'll be fine. I sleep when I'm tired and try to sleep at night. All good.
So what I used to do when I covered the World Championships every year, and I was a younger man in my 30s. MJ, in fact, played for Canada one year when I was there. I used to try to stay at North American hours because I would just go hard every night.
That's such a bad mistake.
And I'd try to stay up till 3 a.m. every night pretty much, and then get in 7 hours sleep, and then just go the next day. And then the adjustment, it basically kept your body clock on North American hours. It worked for me then. I think now I probably couldn't pull it off. I think I'd be tired all the time now if I tried that.
Toronto, Ottawa, Detroit, Minnesota, 4 games to be played through Sunday. Should be fun. We're dealing with international Wi-Fi here too, so we might be dealing with a little bit of a delay with Johnny. That's fine. We'll smash our way through it, and we'll do our best not to talk over one another. We'll make sure we know whose turn it is to talk next. Let's start with the GM meetings, Pierre. I know you were covering in your Rumblings blog. You kind of checked in on a bunch of different things, but what would your headline be? What was Mr. Daly's mood about a few of these things that I'm sure some GMs wanted answers on?
Yeah, and I talked about this on Insider Trading yesterday too. Number one is there was on the official agenda for the GM something called Report on Gambling. So I asked Bill Daly about it yesterday, and what it was is that there were teams that were a bit confused, obviously, after the Shane Pinto suspension about the do's and don'ts, and I think to some degree it irritated the league that they didn't understand after all the documentation they've been given.
Right.
So Bill Daly went over again. And I think he's fairly confident no one's confused anymore after yesterday's GM's meeting. So that was an interesting moment. The other one is, and we've gone down this road before after the Senators forfeiting the first round pick, but now we got more clarity on this, guys. MJ will be interested in this. Bill Daly talked at length with the GMs about the no trade lists. And so what's happened here is because the NHLPA did not want to partake in a central warehousing of no trade lists, so we never have another Evgeny Danilov fiasco again. Bill Daly strongly recommended to GMs yesterday that they submit their no trade list to NHL Central Registry, and then they have nothing to worry about. But they can't force it because the PA isn't on board. So I asked Daly, well, okay, I guess we'll see, are there some teams that have already done this? And he said yes. So some teams have already submitted their no trade list to Central Registry. So it sounds to me like while teams aren't being forced to do this, that there was, I would say, a certain tone in Bill Daly's voice to GMs yesterday that suggested, send us your no trade list. So there you go.
Strongly encourage. And I guess that would say then when you acquire a player, when a trade goes through the central office, then it's like, actually, here's the list so you know what you're getting. Because even like the Dadonov situation, the no trade thing would not have impacted the first step of the trade to Vegas. It would just impacted the second step onto Anaheim, right?
Yeah. So now it would travel with the, if you submitted this, it would travel with the player's file, and the trade.
But
so
it wouldn't be just...
Some teams have already submitted. So every insider is hard at work trying to figure out how to get that information and put it out there publicly.
Are you serious?
And the whole system will come crashing down. Hey,
Central Registry is like Fort Knox, man.
I know. Yeah. I'm kidding. It's the job. One of the other topics that I know is kind of floating out there, and Pierre, they kicked the can down the road, was 3-on-3. Is it broken? Does it need to be fixed? Are there tweaks that can be made? Is it still better than the shootout? Let's be honest. So I don't know. I'll kind of throw it out there. I think it's a fun discussion. Do we think that 3-on-3 needs to be improved because of all these regroups and the amount of time teams spend resting with puck possession? Johnny, does it fundamentally need to be fixed? And do we have any brilliant ideas on this podcast?
I don't think it needs to be fixed. Could it be improved? Perhaps, but I don't think it needs to be fixed. I think that the essence of it is the same. More games are decided in that form of play than on the shootout, which I think what matters most. The only thing I would say is this. It already is a stretch and departure from regular playing, 5-on-5. So you're already changing it pretty dramatically. If you're going to introduce once you cross the blue line, then the red line sort of becomes the blue line and you can't regroup in your own end, sort of offensive zone situation and defensive zone. Again, that is another massive departure from what is actually hockey. I don't know if we need to do that. Even more so, the idea of a shot clock to me is a bad one. Because now you have, I don't know how long it would be, 30 seconds, 45, I don't know. You don't have to shoot, and a power play doesn't shoot every 30 seconds. Like, again, there would also be a real departure and a significant change in trying to keep it somewhat like regular hockey. So I would say, while both those things have been floated, I don't like either of them. I think the first and easiest and most obvious solution, give me 3 more minutes. More players play, guys get tired, chances will occur, games will end. I think the idea is to try to have it played somewhat normally and have as many games to end as possible. I know, again, the Players Association doesn't want to extend games any longer than they already go, but, nobody gets hit in 3-on-3. It's all just skating around, fast, but not under duress. So I think if you just add a few more minutes, that would be the first step I would go to. But I would be hesitant about the other stuff. No regroup, shot clocks, whatever it might be. Pierre, what do you think?
Yeah, and it's funny because some of the writers that were there covered it yesterday were kind of enthused by this conversation, and I'm exactly like you on this. it's already a bit of a gimmick. And listen, my kids love it. There's no going back. 3-on-3 is very popular in my house. But it's already a gimmick, so how much more gimmicky do we want to make it here? And listen, you're talking to a guy that'd be fine with a 60-minute tie. I grew up with that, 3-on-3, Soviet Union, Montreal Canadiens, New Year's Eve, 1975. Nothing wrong with a tie game in mind, but I know we're not going back. I don't like tweaking it. Figure it out. Someone obviously wants to score in 3-on-3. I wouldn't touch it myself. And there's no question the NHLPA has balked at extending 3-on-3, which a lot of GMs would like to see because of the overtaxation of the same players that keep going over the board. So I suspect that because it was brought up yesterday to have a further discussion in March at the real GM meetings, the 3-day GM meetings, we're probably looking at an eventual tweak. They don't just put that on there for March and say, we're going to gloss it over. It means they're going to look at it pretty good. So I think a change is probably coming.
Boring.
Okay.
We're the boring podcast right now.
Well, listen, if you want it to end,
I got to be myself, man. I'm fine with a tie game.
Minor hockey. 3-on-3 for 5 minutes, then 2-on-2 for 4 minutes, and 1-on-1. Like, I mean, you can find ways to make it end.
Oh yeah, you can make an abomination if you want to, for sure.
You know,
Frankenstein the thing. Okay, I would submit though, guys. I would submit that a shootout is already a Frankensteining of the game somewhat.
Totally.
I'll just throw this out there. What if two things? One, I wonder what would happen if you eliminated the long change in overtime, because I wonder how many teams are regrouping because changing is so hard. And if you regroup, you allow your guys to get off the ice, remove the difficulty of changing lines a little bit. And then, now I don't like this because I don't want more whistles, but what if you weren't allowed to carry the puck out of the offensive zone on your stick? You had to pass it out. If you're going to regroup, it's got to be a pass back over the blue line. Otherwise, it's a defensive zone face-off.
Out of here.
Just
what are you going to go back to football?
Thoughts.
No forward.
Go ahead, Johnny. Rip me to shreds.
This is so. Listen.
No.
Listen.
No, you know what I'm saying, Johnny. You have to carry the puck on a regroup, or you have to pass it back over the line.
I understand. I get what you're saying. Ringette, you can't carry it over the blue lines. Either way, I get it. But first off, first one, not bad. Actually, if you don't flip the zones, make the changes easier, then the advantage of doing the regroup is sort of negated because by the time you get back to your own blue line, guys will be able to shuffle off to their short bench. That would really eliminate one of the advantages in taking your time forever.
And you're welcome.
Part of that, one of the dumbest things you've ever said on this podcast. Honestly, you can't pass the puck, or you can't skate it over the blue lines. You have to no.
Not in the offensive direction, Johnny. Only heading back to your own net. Retreating. There's no retreats. There is no retreat in 3-on-3.
Yes. No, bad idea completely. But I do listen. Like something.
All right, fine.
Something as simple and small as not switching the benches. Like that would be like I don't even know if fans would even notice, and yet it would feel the same. But strategy would change because what has happened? We've seen it. Strategy is now you basically wait them out. You might change 2 or 3 times. You get a team out there that has the same guys for 75 or 80 seconds, and then you attack because they're exhausted. If you don't like it, you keep doing it. Or if you don't have as many talented players, you're like, we don't even want to trade chances. We just try to run at the clock. So that might help with some of that. Not bad, but also terrible.
And by the way, the fact that this has happened, the 3-on-3 overtime, which is fine with me. It's a regular season. But can we now do away with the conversation that some people actually started 2 years ago about maybe going to 3-on-3 overtime in the playoffs? Are you nuts?
Don't need it.
Yeah.
Don't need it.
This is not what you want in the playoffs when it actually matters. Come on.
And the way the game's played now,
agree.
It goes that deep. Like there's no more Anaheim, Dallas every single game going forward.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Right.
Never happens. Like maybe one a playoff goes to double overtime. It's fine.
This is a positive development. I have fixed something, and Johnny loves my idea. I'm gonna. That's my takeaway from what just happened, Johnny. Great
that
idea,
wasn't
Ryan.
my takeaway. I actually had a different takeaway.
Moving on. Let's talk about some trade stuff, guys. And obviously, it's got to be surrounding the Calgary Flames. Tanev, Zadorov, Hanifin, Lindholm. There's just these names are just floating around out there, and you got Craig Conroy in his first time in this position. Wheeling and dealing and making calls and such. First and foremost, Pierre, this is a tremendous amount to be on one GM's plate at any given time, trying to move these caliber of names at any given time. Not easy for a first-time GM. That's a big lift.
Well, and it's actually fascinating. I don't want to go too long on this, but if you rewind the clock to when Craig Conroy was named general manager, we had him on our podcast, right? Ryan, you may remember. And
Yeah.
he said one of the lessons that they learn as an organization is they were not going to have another Johnny Gaudreau, where they were going to deal with their pending UFAs in a manner in which either they get signed or they get asset value in return way before they're forced into a July 1st situation with them. So he was pretty public about that. Then we got to the draft in Nashville. We were all there, and a lot of the reporting at the time was that teams were calling on Lindholm, and, calling on Hanifin, and all this was going on. They did trade Tyler Toffoli. But then the Flames, as you remember last summer, were like, wait a minute, we're going to try and sign some of these guys. We're feeling good about our chances again. And so they nearly signed Hanifin last month. It was very, very, very close. Both sides were in the ballpark. It was going to be about close to $60 million on a max deal for Noah Hanifin. And then Noah Hanifin, I'm told, was like, you know what? Let's just see how the season plays out here early. And now that ship has sailed for both sides. So what's happened now is the Flames have kind of retreated back because of their start to the year and said, we need a roster reset. We're going to listen. What they've told teams is we're going to listen on our pending UFAs. Not 100% they trade all of them. They may still sign, I guess, one of them. But they're now listening on Lindholm, listening on Hanifin, listening on Chris Tanev, who, boy, if I'm a playoff contender, I'd love to have him on my blue line and add a bit of a Vegas-type blue liner to my team. And Nikita Zadorov, who kind of kicked off the weekend with a trade request through his agent. I think all those guys get moved between now and March 8th, and the Flames have to find a way to kind of slow play this where they're not doing this all at once, right? They got a lot of pieces to.
And Johnny, as you evaluate these names, like, are there some obvious potential fits for you? If you look at guys like real clear, obvious fits for any of these guys, some stuff that you think would be front running teams.
Doesn't it feel like Lindholm should just get traded to Boston now and get it over with? I mean, like, they need centerman, two-way reliable guy. They had some pretty good success with Hampus Lindholm coming over, signing him, and turning into a really good player. That seems to make an obvious sense. Like, him at under $5 million, right? He's 4.8 or something like that. Like, there's a lot of teams that would like him, but a great team that needs centerman and that is playing really well. I think Boston would be interested in a guy like him. And then, to me, it feels like Hanifin would be trade for and sign. Tanev and Zadorov trade for as rentals. Like, I think they almost are in different sort of categories. So, maybe it's an Arizona or, a team that's looking to get better trades for Hanifin and signs him that big deal. And a team, a Toronto or a team that needs, an uptick on defense trades for one of the other guys as a rental because they can't afford to go long term. But, every time I hear Lindholm's name, I'm like, oh, yeah, Boston Bruins. It looks like it makes too much sense that it probably won't happen. But I think the key is, though, don't leave this all late. You said he's going to play this out over several months, space it out, because you don't want to be sitting there a week before the deadline going, we got these 4 assets, and it's just the volume is too much for the league to absorb all these moves at the last minute. You chip away, so you maybe have 1 or 2 coming down to the wire, not all 4.
Yeah. Exactly. That's bang on. That's what they have to be careful here, because they're already getting trade offers on them, but they have to figure out between now and March 8th what the timing is right for moving some of these pieces. And it's great that you brought up that whole point about Reynolds versus sign and trade. I think Hanifin almost definitely will be either a sign and trade or a trade and sign, whatever the sequence is. I think he'll be extended as part of a trade when he gets dealt. Lindholm, we'll see. I know I spoke to a team this week that has a lot of interest in Lindholm, but then heard that it was $9 million a year to extend him, and they're like, we don't want to just rent him out. So some of those conversations are happening internally in front offices. Like, what do we think Elias Lindholm is worth on a new deal? Tanev, does he go as a rental, or do you want to sign him? That's another whole part of this discussion is that, the Flames might get pretty far on a trade framework for some of these guys. It's in the Flames' interest that some of these guys move as extended players, right? I mean, they get better asset value back if these guys aren't rentals. So a lot at play here, but the Flames are an action team. And Craig Conroy, by the way, after the GM's meeting, bolted for the elevator like it was his 50th year doing a GM's meeting. He was like a veteran and very politely said, I'm not talking today.
My favorite one ever was Mark Bergevin grabbing the plant and holding the plant in front of himself as he walked past the media that one day. I think that was in Boca Raton.
Yeah.
God, we all had a good laugh at that. It's a great
By
point,
the way,
though. Yeah,
a great PS on all of this, and you guys may disagree, but if we, and this is not a criticism about tree living, because I think at the time, we have to be honest, we all kind of liked that trade, getting Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar for Matthew Tkachuk. But if you go back to that moment, and everyone involved has confirmed this, it's not even, and Matthew Tkachuk himself has talked about Carolina being the runner-up for him. The Carolina trade offer to Calgary that summer in August 22 was more of a futures deal, but it had some high-end futures pieces in it. And now that you see that the Flames are headed down this roster reset, you kind of look at it and say maybe they should have taken the Carolina deal.
That was not the headspace they were in any way, shape, or form. Right? When he was having to move those guys, it was not about futures. It was, how do we not miss a beat here? And that was very front of mind for him. All right, it'll be interesting to watch. Anything on Patrick Kane here, Pierre? No acquisition costs, right? This is about signing a player. Has the list expanded? When do we first see him in a game? How's that?
Yeah, Drake's talked about this on Insider Trading, and I wrote about it as well. CJ had a big piece on him last week, so that this is getting towards its. This is a big week. So Pat Brisson is having Zoom calls with both coaches and GMs of interested teams this week, which is the second step in this process. Patrick Kane will be on some of those Zoom calls. I think Patrick Kane could be on the ice with a new NHL team within 2 or 3 weeks here. So we're heading towards a decision. The interesting thing is, Pat Brisson told me early last week that he hoped to keep the list at 5 or 6 teams. But as Drake said yesterday, I think we're closer to 8 now because teams are trying to get in here and get their say and express their interest. I spoke to Kevin Adams yesterday, the GM of the Buffalo Sabres, who confirmed the obvious, but he said, "Yeah, we're trying to hang in there." Well,
they got an opening now too, right, for a skilled player.
So we'll see where this goes. Florida, the Rangers, Detroit, a few other teams. The one thing to keep in mind, and not to get too down a CBA tunnel, but this is going to have to be a 1-year deal and not a multi-year deal, because if you do a multi-year deal at this stage of the season, the cap hit for this year is through the roof. Remember when Nylander with the Leafs signed December 1st? So you do a 1-year deal with them, and then maybe there's a wink, this could be a fit past this year, and you find a way to do an extension at some point. But I think that's where it's probably headed.
I'm curious how teams will be able to or understand his health. Patrick Kane is obviously an incredible player, an amazing player, Hall of Famer. Maybe they're one of the best American players ever. But he wasn't as good as he usually is last year with the bum hips. So, yes, he's back and he's healthy, and presumably he's back to better. But is he back to 5 years ago? Was he back to 2? I don't. It's if you're taking a leap of faith, right, you're gonna bring him on your team. He's a big personality and a big talent, and you're going to make it work in your room. Are you getting the 60-point version from last year? You're getting the 90-point version from a couple years. And you won't know. And I get it. The videos of him skating around in an empty rink, he looks good. But you know what, Shaggy? I look pretty good when there's nobody around me either, right? I just, how they try to process all that and make sure that his game is where he and they want it to be when they make the commitment, not even financially, but just they got to work it on the team. He's going to bump someone off the top 6. He's going to bump someone on the power play. He's going to bump someone off the first power play. These are not inconsequential decisions that a team will undergo. And you got to make sure that he's going to be healthy enough to warrant that amount of integration.
So I would say 2 things to that, MJ, because that's an excellent point. One is that I talked to a team about this, and I don't even know if this team's still in it, but this team said to me, the fact that it's probably a 1-year deal gives it more of a flyer. Yep. Even though this guy's going to Hall of Fame, it's more of a flyer for that perspective if you're just signing him for the rest of the year. So that's number one. You're not committing, but to your point, and this is probably unfair to Patrick Kane because you should never associate another player's health to another player's health. It's ridiculous. But Nick Backstrom had hip resurfacing surgery, which is the exact same surgery Patrick Kane had. And, Nick Backstrom's career is very likely over. In fact, I ran into Brian McClellan yesterday at GM's meeting, the GM of the Caps, who said it is unlikely that Nick Backstrom will return. So again, that's not fair to put that situation on Patrick Kane because two different human beings. But the hip resurfacing surgery isn't done that often for hockey players. So to your point.
Okay, I want to get to the Edmonton Oilers, but the Edmonton Oilers these days have a way of hijacking an entire podcast. So rather than doing a 40-minute segment on what, we're going to kind of modify our quick hitter segment and apply it to the Edmonton Oilers right now. So I'll ask you a question and try and keep it to like 30, 40 seconds, and because there's a few we got to get through here, Johnny. So we'll start with this first and foremost. The decision to fire Jay Woodcroft coming off that win against Seattle, obviously having lost to San Jose, after which the decision was made. Johnny, what did you make of the thought process and the way that whole thing played out? Was it the right thing to do?
So I see both sides of it. I understand the urgency to change something in a year where they can't let it go too far if it wasn't going to be working. So I get it. I get it in that sense. But also, like, if you look at the numbers, look the way they played, aside from the goaltending, which the coaches don't really control, a lot of the underlying numbers for Edmonton were strong enough that wouldn't warrant a coaching change. Ken Holland said it himself. They had the second best record under Jay Woodcroft's tenure in the NHL. And then went on to say, but we're winning now. Well, you are winning now. You've won under him. So I get the need to change, but I also get the idea that they probably would have been fine had they not made the change. It was a tricky situation because they feel so much pressure, Pierre, about this year and next, and trying to make something happen deep in the playoffs in the next couple of years.
Yes, and listen, Ryan has been all over this in his reporting on this. Let's just be clear that Ken Holland wasn't the only one making decisions here in all this. I think it's bullshit that Jay Woodcroft was fired when he was. I think that he should have been given more time. I think the underlying numbers suggested a team that was about to turn it around. I do not believe he lost the room. The guys are still playing hard for him, and I would have given Jay Woodcroft more time. Now, Chris Nolak might end up being the greatest Oilers coaching hire ever. That's not to take away from him. It might be unbelievable. And then people are going to look back and say, well, there you go. That was exactly the right move at the right time. How do you know? How do you know if there's not another week of Woodcroft that the Oilers aren't on a run? So I didn't like it. That's my opinion. I could be wrong.
The Oilers, to make the playoffs, are going to have to 55 run of hockey from now to the end of the season, right? If 98 points, give or take, we'll use that as the benchmark.
I think it's going to be less than 98. Telling you.
Yeah, and that's fair, Pierre. That's fair. But let's put it in the range where sometimes it is. So, bottom line, the question here, Johnny, is can the Edmonton Oilers play at the pace they need to play at to still catch a playoff spot, given what we've seen from them so far this year? Like, can you just recapture? Basically, they got to play roughly in the zone they did last year.
The answer is yeah. I think they can. I think we saw first game under Knobloch, two important pieces is Draisaitl and McDavid have to be Draisaitl McDavid, which they haven't been that way in production so far this year. Should we believe that they will get back to something closer to last year than what they had done this year? Yeah, like Connor McDavid was outside the top 100 in scoring in the NHL. That's not going to last, right? He may not be first, but he's not going to be 100th. So I do think they can do it. The one wild card, of course, goaltending. They have to get better in that department. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, Pierre, but that's the one wild card that might prohibit them from doing so.
Yeah, that's what makes me nervous about being definitive in my answer is that, yes, I honestly believe, that it's not going to be 98 points to get in on the number 8 seed in the West. I think it's going to be 94, 93 points, and I think the Oilers can get there. But the goal, I don't know anything about goaltending, and it's been so bad that how do I know it's going to be better? I guess because Stuart Skinner had a great year last year, but I'm going to say yes, but with an asterisk, literally just based on getting good enough save percentage to not be bottom third.
Johnny, should Paul Coffey have resigned his position as special advisor to Daryl Cates before taking the assistant coach's job? Did the organization need to publicly state that was the case? Is it as awkward as some, including me, think it is to have a special advisor to the owner in the coach's office?
So if you care enough about those things, then the title doesn't matter. Like the perceived closeness to the owner, the advisory capacity, you can say, oh, he's not that anymore. Guess what? he is still that. Whether you call him that or not, he is that.
Agreed.
So it's going to be awkward for you because he has that relationship, or you don't care and he still has that relationship. Changing titles means nothing. Players would not care, but the players will care if they don't feel like they can trust Paul Coffey. The idea that it's us in the room, we're in it together, and sometimes it's us against the people from management and against the ownership, and we're the ones in here that get it. If you think that even a Hall of Fame awesome guy, Paul Coffey, is a pipeline to the owner because Mike Johnson is struggling and he stays up too late at night and he plays too many video games, he loses money on car, like whatever, that will be a problem for Koff and the team and the amount of trust that they'll need. But changing title means nothing. But there is a situation there as far as trust.
You know, for me, it's not so much that someone on a bench has a direct line to ownership, because there have been head coaches. I mean, John Tortorella has a pretty good line upstairs in Philly. You know, when Mike Babcock was in Toronto, he had a direct line to Larry Tannenbaum, Joel Quenneville over there. Like, it's not
a bunch of head coaches, Pierre. Those are a bunch of head coaches.
This is where I'm going. So it's not that there's a direct line from coaching staff to. It's that it's not the head coach in this case. Exactly. That's what's unusual. And again, it's unique. Paul Coffey's a Hall of Famer. Obviously, you know, knows the game inside out. But it's, you know, let's just say that when I'm talking to other front offices right now, obviously that's the first thing people are asking about. Not always in a negative way, by the way. People are just saying, well, that's going to be interesting. Let's see how that plays out.
So I asked Paul Coffey the question in the press conference. Yeah, go ahead, Johnny. Yeah.
So I had Wayne Gretzky as a coach, the greatest player ever, a guy who knows more about hockey than anyone. He was a better coach his second year than his first. We'll leave it at that. Like, you know, it's like, even if you understand the game, coaching still takes a bit of work. And he's been in a spot, Koff's going in a spot where there's no learning curve for him. Like, he has to be good, and the D have to be good under his tutelage right away. So that will be a challenge.
And I did ask him during the press conference about that, how you handle both those jobs and maintain a healthy chain of command and all that. You really get the feeling like he said it's about respect. You just have to respect the people around you. I think he's going in there with the best of intentions, 100%. And I think that, you know, fundamentally speaking, people feel like Paul Coffey's a trustworthy guy that's well-intentioned. So that'll be his needle to thread, how to square that with the other guys in that coaching room. Last one on this.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, remember last week I mentioned this, and it didn't seem that relevant, but I mentioned that Ken Holland's on an expiring deal. And this is, to be honest, because I think there are a lot of things dancing in my mind as to how this could all play out. It is relevant now, isn't it, that point? I mean,
100%.
Yeah.
Like,
1,000%.
You know,
this is not Ken Holland's work, you guys. I'm going to tell you
Jackson's running the show.
This is not his. Yeah,
Right.
This exactly. Ken Holland's solution to this would not have been fire Jay Woodcroft, hire Chris Knobloch, and install Paul Coffey as an assistant coach. Ken Holland would not have made those decisions. Whatever you think of what's happened here, that's not coming from the brain of Ken Holland. Last one on this, Johnny. Fundamentally, there's very little margin for error for this Oiler team. We all know the consequences, ripple effect over the next couple of seasons with the Draisaitl extension and potentially McDavid. They can't have this be a 6-month death march for a bunch of reasons. With all of that on the line, fundamentally, was it a mistake to put two guys in place who have not done those specific jobs before at this level?
You open yourself up to a world of hurt if it doesn't go well. I don't know if it's fundamentally a mistake. I mean, the proof will be in the results. I guess I'm reserving judgment, but you put in two inexperienced. Now, Chris Knobloch is an experienced guy who would have been a head coach at some point in his life in the NHL. It's not like he doesn't understand. He's not worked at it. And yes, he's Connor's former junior coach, but he's been a pro coach for a long time. But yeah, you can't have it not go well in any way, shape, or form because of their coaching staff. And if it goes down that road, Pierre, then that's a real big problem for the Oilers.
I mean, listen, I don't want to be an alarmist, but I was actually thinking about this because, you know, I knew we were going to come on air today and talk about this. Under which scenario do you now think Leon Draisaitl still has a chance to extend it next summer? So here's what let's say the Oilers get in. They get the 8th seed. It's 94 points to get in. They just did enough, but then they get waxed in the first round. So is that good enough to feel like you're going to win some cups here? Or at this very point with the Oilers where they are in the standings, does it actually take the Oilers at least winning a round again for Leon Draisaitl to feel like the ship's back in the right direction? So my point is that like we keep debating, can they still make the playoffs or not? This is not about making the playoffs or not for this team and for Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. It's about, are we winning a cup or not? So literally on this morning, if Leon Draisaitl was on air with us and we had truth serum in him, how do you really think he feels about that decision coming this summer with 1 year left on his deal?
I don't know. I mean, I think what will happen, it will come down to how much he wants to stay in Edmonton, and it will no longer be about, I trust that we're a great team. It's more like leap of faith, but I love it here. You know, that the idea that
and his
the
friendship
quality
Connor,
of
obviously.
the team he's playing on is not going to be enough to carry the day. It's going to have to be more, I love Edmonton and don't want to move on from that city, because I don't think almost anything that could happen this year is going to be, we're so great at hockey that I have to stay here because I'm going to have a chance of winning for the next 8 years.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And obviously it dramatically affects potentially the Connor McDavid extension the following year. And this is why this year is so important. This is why they can't have this be a 6-month miserable death march. And make no mistake, if it goes the wrong way for the next 3 weeks, it will be miserable. Right. And I don't think so either. I think this team has it in it to turn this around. But guys, Leon Draisaitl, I'm telling you, man, this guy, like, I can't imagine he'll be feeling like he owes the city or the organization, right? Whatever happens here. Like, this guy's been playing on a contract that is out of this world, team
because
friendly.
He doesn't.
And he signed it in good faith.
But he owes Edmonton nothing. He's given them all that he could ever be asked to give him. 11 years of his career.
Exactly.
Wicked value deal. Yes, they provided him a great opportunity. Every team provides every player that. He doesn't owe them. Now, he may want to go back. He may love Edmonton.
I will say this, that I will give you two kind of recent, well, one recent one about Canadian teams. Two guys that when they were heading into 1 year left on their deal, where some people wondered if truly they would want to extend. One lot this past summer is Austin Matthews. Now, I always thought he would, and I think a lot of people did, but some people remember we were talking about LA and going back there. I don't know, like it was out there. What would Austin Matthews do? And he extended. So my point is, you got to be careful. I always try to get into the player's mind in that position. The other one was Carey Price, and people may forget this, but before he signed that massive extension with Marc Bergevin that summer years ago, ups and downs in Montreal, the pressure of the market, a guy that's pretty reserved, and a lot of people wondered, would he actually? You guys remember this conversation? Would he actually extend? And he did. So what I'm saying is, we're going to try to get into Leon's mind here this year, I think. And at the end of the day, I don't even think people close to him will know for sure until he makes up his mind. Is what I get from these situations.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, the dollars and cents of it, right? Like, he's going to need to know that he's got a chance to win Stanley Cups here, which, playing next to Connor McDavid, I mean, you probably will, but what's the dollar figure? I mean, what's the dollar figure? Like, because you got to get McDavid done too, and I know the cap is going up, but it's not going to be unlimited space. And what's the number out there from somebody for Leon Draisaitl? And do you blame him if he's wanting to take a look and see what that might be?
Isn't it Austin Matthews' number? It's kind of where he goes right away. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, that's the starting point, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move off the Edmonton Oilers because we could do 3 more days on them. I want to talk about 2 goal scorers this year. And these guys are at completely opposite ends, but boy, are both ever impressing right now. Who is surprising you more, Mike Johnson?
Frank Vatrano.
Connor Bedard in his start, right? 9 goals. Or Sidney Crosby on a 59-goal pace. What 2 fantastic stories from guys on the opposite ends of it.
Okay, well, it's got to be Sid, right? Like, Sid is just wild. Like, Bedard, 9 goals, yes, incredible. I think I had him pegged for 40-ish goals, which is a huge number for a rookie. But, you know, he's showing that he can shoot. He's gotten the feel for it now. He's going to be a great goal scorer. Did anyone have Sid pushing close to 50 at this point in his life? No. Nobody would have had that. He is just incredible. And we talked about, what is he going for, his 18th straight point-per-game season? You know, he's just churning them out.
Yep.
But
Ty Gretzky's record.
Yeah, Ty Gretzky. To get around that number, Pierre, to me, it's got to be Sid, because he's supposed to be getting worse while Bedard presumably is still getting better.
The thing is, I'm just never surprised by anything Sidney Crosby does. Look how consistent he was last year. I mean, there's never been a hint of a drop-off in his game. So that's a tough question for me to answer. I'm not surprised. I'm honestly not surprised at what he's doing. He's just, this is who he is, man. And he would have made sure this summer that he's the guy that might surprise us with the retirement announcement, I wonder, because his standard is so high and his consistency that he may refuse to even dip for 1 second. You know what I mean? I'm going to go with the other one because I think nothing Crosby does surprise me. So I'm going to go the opposite way from MJ here.
The correct answer is Frank Vatrano. That's the correct answer.
Well, yeah, maybe that's the...
Yeah.
He's also on pace
100%.
for 50. Yes.
Gotta love surprises. Yep. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there, Johnny. What were you saying about Vatrano?
I'm saying the fact that he's on pace for 50 as well for the Ducks that are in a playoff spot, that to me is the biggest surprise out of those three things.
11 goals in 15 games so far for Frankie Vatrano. Man.
Mm-hmm.
Back to my point about the number 8 playoff spot in the West. I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone has to finish 8th in the West.
Might not take 98 points. Johnny, you ready to head out on the town and try some of that amazing Swedish delicacy? Pierre, any advice, culinary advice for Johnny here on his odyssey?
Oh, I've been to Stockholm twice. Absolutely top 5 for me in terms of places outside of Canada. Love Stockholm. I would just remind you that I don't think there's a last call in that town.
Good to know. Good to know. I do have Gord Miller as my tour guide, who has been here like 20 times. We went to an absolutely incredible restaurant last night. Like not out, but like it was a 6 p.m. Blue Hair special reservation, but it was incredibly good. Incredibly good. So I'll follow his lead. And there is one particular establishment that is very famous in this town that I've never been to, but it's been like noteworthy as a fun place to go for the better part of like 20 or 30 years, as Pierre nods his head in acceptance of this. So I am going to go there at some point. I'm not a big fan of the opera, but I might be going to the Cafe Opera. At some point in this trip, I got to see this thing.
Have you run into Nick Lidstrom over there? How's Nicky doing?
So I was at practice today, and Alfie was there. Mats is going to be there. And Nick Lidstrom, I walked by, I'm like, oh, he really let himself go. He looks flawless. He looks unbelievable. He could be playing tonight, tomorrow night for Detroit, second PP in a heartbeat. He is like in perfect shape. The only thing is maybe like
annoying.
His hair is thinned a smidge. That is the only thing that's happened to him in the last 20 years. Had a chance to catch up with him. He's having a good time working with Detroit and doing some stuff, scouting for them. But we did run into him, and he is every bit of the Mr. Perfection that he was when he played.
Lidstrom looks 25, and Zdeno Chara is running marathons. I don't know.
What's wrong with us? That's what I want to know. What the heck is our problem? All right, good stuff, guys.
I don't think you should include MJ in our conversation here.
He looks tired. He looks haggard today. I'm lumping him right in there with us, Pierre.
That's correct.
I thought MJ was going to send me a nasty text last week at the Leafs Senators Battle of Ontario. I tweeted out a picture that there's a picture on the wall in the 6th floor hallway when you walk to the press box of a rookie Mike Johnson standing near the boards during a practice. Do you know this picture I'm talking about, MJ?
Yeah,
you always walk by it.
It was warm up
on the way to the press box. Yeah, okay. And I tweeted it out. It's like MJ has not aged. He looks the same as that picture from 19 whenever it was.
Don't get cocky, MJ. You're no Nick Lidstrom, bud.
That is for damn sure. And that was evidence this morning when I said hello to him. Like, shit, that guy looks good. Yes.
Let's all be better. Let's all eat a little better and live our life a little better for this next week. Thanks, guys. We got to wrap up here. We're chewing our way through some connection issues too. So thanks for bearing with us here on the podcast, folks. Thanks, MJ. Good job, Pierre. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thank you for all your downloads and your subscriptions. If you get a chance, head over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think of the podcast here on Got Your Back, and we will chat again next week. Huge thanks to our title sponsors, Kuma Outdoor Gear. Cheers, everyone.